The One Piece world is full of drinks, all portrayed in fascinating and meaningful ways. Oda gives each of them their own flavor, their own vibe, their own cultural identity. But there's one drink that dominates without contest: alcohol. And when we say alcohol, we also say the cult of drinking. From the East Blue to the New World, the culture of drinking is so deeply embedded in the story, it's become more than just a detail, it's a recurring symbol, a ritual, a way of life. Rum, sake, grog, you name it. Whether it's pirates clinking mugs after battle, or powerful figures toasting to the next era, alcohol flows through the veins of the series. That makes sense when you think about it. Real-life pirate crews drank together to solidify loyalty, to celebrate, to feel alive, to break rules, and live without limits. When pirates drink, they are free. Just look at the structure of the story. After nearly every major arc, once the villain is defeated and the dust settles, what happens? A celebration, a party, a toast. It's the repeating rhythm of joy and freedom. It's a message: we are free, we are together. Even the idea of One Piece itself, the name of the treasure, suggests unity, as if the world is meant to be brought together like friends clinking glasses over shared sake. Some believe the One Piece might turn out to be something symbolic, like a bottle of sake or a barrel of rum, and it's not a baseless guess. Oda has seeded this idea carefully. The culture of drinking sake is deeply tied to Japanese tradition, where it's used to form bonds, solidify friendships, and celebrate victories. In One Piece, this tradition echoes powerfully. And here's another thing worth noting: alcohol, like treasure, gains value with time. The more it ages, the more refined and delicious it becomes. A bottle left untouched for decades could carry not just taste but legacy, making it the perfect symbol of something that waited centuries to be opened and shared. But even with all that said, I have my doubts. I've got problems with this idea. Something just doesn't sit right. The pieces are there, but somehow they don't add up. Sure, alcohol plays a massive symbolic role. Sure, it's everywhere, but I keep thinking, would Oda really make that the final treasure? Would the man who crafts layers upon layers of mystery, meaning, and legacy really say here it is, the ultimate prize, a bottle of sake? There are a few reasons why I think not. First off, One Piece is still a story for younger audiences. Oda's style isn't one that glorifies substance use or promotes cult-like behavior. He's playful, but deeply thoughtful, and more importantly, Oda respects other cultures, backgrounds, and beliefs. Oda's readers span across the world. There's no way he hasn't considered this. And here's another thing. At first glance, alcohol might seem like the perfect metaphor for joy, unity, and freedom. A way to celebrate, to stretch boundaries, to connect. But in our world? It's far more complicated. Alcohol has destroyed more bonds than it's forged. It's torn families apart, shattered lives, poisoned minds, and left scars on generations. So how could something that represents freedom in fiction become the symbol of destruction in reality? Then I started thinking about real pirates, the actual, historical ones. Because if you study history, alcohol wasn't a blessing. It was a curse. A silent killer. A tool of control. Rum and grog didn't unite pirates, they ruined them. They lost their teeth. Their health. Their clarity. They drank to escape, but the more they drank, the easier they were to manipulate. Alcohol gave the illusion of freedom, while quietly rotting everything from the inside. And I believe Oda knows this. He's too smart, too deliberate, too visionary to glorify a culture that ultimately enslaves its people. So then, I started to realize something. What if this culture of drinking in One Piece isn't a celebration at all? What if it's a deliberate trap? A subtle system of sedation. A ritual of control. A grand distraction designed to dull the senses of the masses and keep even the strongest warriors just a little bit easier to handle. And who would orchestrate such a thing? Imu-sama. A ruler in the shadows. A manipulator. Embedding alcohol into every layer of society. Naming islands after tequila and whiskey. Turning joy into addiction. Turning brotherhood into bondage. Because the more they drink, the more they forget. The more they celebrate, the less they question. The more they toast to freedom, the more they unknowingly chain themselves to their captor. And if you haven't seen it yet, open your eyes. Almost everyone in One Piece drinks. The Pirate King. Marines. Pirates. Yonkos. Warlords. All of them drunk. Celebrating. Sedated. Part of the flow. Part of the system. Except for one. The boy with the freest heart in the world. Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy almost never drinks. In chapter 800, when his Grand Fleet begs to form a sake pact, he refuses. He doesn't want followers. Doesn't want to be king. Doesn't want the throne. Through tradition? No. No toast. No pact. No booze. And that moment wasn't random. It was resistance. It was freedom. Luffy is the only one strong enough to resist the current. And that's why he's the only one fit to overthrow the regime of Ima-sama. But if alcohol isn't the true answer, if it isn't the real symbol of freedom, then there must be another drink. One that stands for freedom. One that stands for unity. One that holds the power to oppose everything alcohol was meant to control. A counter-drink. A symbolic antidote. A pure, innocent, unifying force. Something that stands opposite to the cult of intoxication. Something tied to Luffy. To his childlike innocence. To his bond with the crew. Something tied to the sun god Nika. Something tied to the mystery of D. Something Oda has very quietly placed in the background. Only giving us little drops. Subtle clues. Are you ready? The drink is none other than milk. Yes, you heard that right, it's milk. Strange, isn't it? Milk was never part of the pirate cult. In fact, back in chapter 1, when Shanks told Luffy, "Great pirates don't drink milk," you laughed. But maybe that line was never a joke. Maybe it was a test. Let's find out if the real great pirates drink milk. Let's begin. Some of you are probably laughing already. Milk? Seriously? How could something so soft, so innocent, so childish ever compete with the wild, rugged, drunken glory of pirate life? Especially in One Piece, where the cult of alcohol is everywhere. It defines pirate culture. But that's exactly why I'm posting this theory. Because what if milk, the quiet, overlooked drink in the background, is actually the hidden symbol? What if it creates deeper bonds than those sake cups ever could? What if milk is closer to the truth behind the will of D? And if One Piece's final treasure were a drink? Then milk, not alcohol, is the stronger candidate. Why? Let's break it down. Before words, before thoughts, before even identity, there is milk. A newborn's first link to the world. The first act of love. The first form of unity. It's more than just food, it's a lifeline. Milk represents purity, protection, and unconditional care. And most importantly, it creates unbreakable bonds. In many cultures, milk has sacred power. In Islam, two babies breastfed by the same woman become milk siblings. Legally binding, like blood. Marriage between them is strictly forbidden. This isn't metaphor. It's law. In certain medieval and early modern societies, especially in Catholic Europe, milk kinship was a powerful social and spiritual bond. Sharing a wet nurse could create ties as strong as blood. What is forbidden by blood kinship is equally forbidden by milk kinship. In the Mongol empires, warriors drank fermented mare's milk, called arag, from the same bowl to become anda, sworn brothers for life. This isn't just friendship. It's kinship. Milk siblings couldn't marry. Anda would die for each other. Now ask yourself, does a drunken toast compare to that? But it doesn't stop there. Milk kinship built dynasties. Abbasid caliphs raised milk brothers to generals. In Africa, royal wet nurses turned outsiders into heirs. In the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan's wet nurse was revered as his second mother. Her bond with the ruler could lift her family from peasant origins to privilege, making her an empire shaper. In Native American societies, the bond went even deeper. When Crazy Horse, a 19th-century Lakota chief, was a baby, he nursed at the breast of every woman in the tribe. The Sioux raised their children that way. Every warrior called every old woman mother. Every old warrior they called grandfather. Milk didn't just make family, it made a people. Milk created bonds deeper than sake cups ever could. It made real brotherhood that shaped empires, tribes, and thrones. Now, let's talk about a phenomenon in One Piece that's recurrent. It's dualities between characters. I'm talking about how two individuals, often rivals, sometimes friends, show totally contrasting behaviors. It's like they're polar opposites. Luffy versus Blackbeard, the most obvious. Luffy is carefree, courageous, sleeps a lot. While Blackbeard is fearful, ambitious in a dark way, and said to never sleep. Even though both carry the initial D, their energies could not be more opposite. We see this again and again. Sanji versus Zoro. Buggy versus Shanks. Nekomamushi versus Inuarashi. Even when they fight on the same side, they never truly understand each other. They clash. They oppose. They contradict. Like two ends of a magnet linked by fate, but always in tension. It reminds me of Naruto, chapter 399. Tobi tells Sasuke, the Uchiha and Senju were like oil and water. Two clans, same ancestor, yet doomed to never mix. And the D-Clan? Feels exactly the same. But, what if it wasn't always about duality? What if the original pattern was a trinity? Look at Luffy, Ace, and Sabo. Three brothers. All different, yet perfectly bonded. No rivalry. Just balance. Maybe, the world of One Piece was once built on three forces. And the third was the bridge. The peacemaker. So, how does this tie to milk? Because milk is the drink that proves oil and water can mix. If you add a third ingredient, that third element is casein. A protein. An emulsifier. Milk is an emulsion. A mix of two liquids that should never combine. Water and fat. And yet, they stay united. Why? Because casein binds them. Holds them together. In One Piece, that third element could have been the casein of the D-Clan. The force that kept them together. But during the Void Century, Imu erased it. Removed the unifier. And what's left? Oil and water. Conflict. Rivalry. A broken world. That's why the world is still not one piece. In One Piece, you may have noticed the theme of cooking is more than just a quirky side note. It's a recurring motif. Sanji isn't just a cook for comic relief, his role embodies something deeper. Cooking in One Piece is about care. It's about feeding the poor, not wasting food, and healing people through nourishment. Sanji's cooking is shown to restore energy, heal battle wounds, and even tame wild hearts. It's almost magical. But that magic isn't just about ingredients, it's about how you bring them together. And that's where emulsifiers come in. In the real world, emulsifiers are the unsung heroes of cooking. They let us do the impossible. Oil and water don't mix, but add an emulsifier like egg yolk, and suddenly, you've got mayonnaise. A smooth, creamy miracle born from chaos. That's why emulsifiers are often considered a kind of culinary alchemy. They don't just stabilize, they elevate. They make cooking feel like wizardry. The joy of blending things that shouldn't blend is part of what makes cooking so beautiful. So what does that have to do with One Piece? Because in science, milk is an emulsion. It's made of water and fat. Two things that shouldn't mix. But they do, thanks to casein, a natural protein emulsifier. Casein binds them. Unites them. Makes milk whole. And in the world of One Piece, isn't that the dream? For broken pieces to come together as one? To be at opposite poles is an old idiom that speaks of fundamental difference. It means being at opposite extremes, or having completely different opinions, qualities, or beliefs. It implies a deep contrast, or outright opposition, between two things or people. The D-Clan doesn't just reflect one form of opposition like oil and water, it mirrors multiple dualities across nature, science, and myth. It's worth pointing out that in physics, polarities tend to attract. Whether it's magnetic poles or positive and negative charges, opposites naturally seek unity. But in chemistry, the story is different. Polar substances like oil and water don't mix, they resist each other unless something intervenes. The dualities in One Piece, especially within the D-Clan, feel much closer to this chemical model. Start with Luffy versus Blackbeard. Luffy, the embodiment of courage and warmth. He laughs in the face of death, radiates heat, and loves to sleep. He's relaxed but fearless. Blackbeard? The exact opposite. Paranoid, cold, never sleeps, and haunted by the fear of death. They are not just rivals, they are two ends of a cosmic spectrum. This polar theme runs deeper. Take Inuarashi and Nekomamushi. A dog and a cat, constantly at odds like the classic Tom and Jerry. Yet they rule together in shifts of night and day. Then you have the subtle duality of Shanks and Buggy. These dualities may also be mirrored in two primary colors, red versus blue. Red hair versus blue hair. Punk Hazard, a literal clash of red magma, Akainu, versus blue ice, Akiji. Land versus sea, with red often symbolizing the soil, and blue the oceans. In the color spectrum, red and blue are almost inverted. They sit on opposite ends of the visible light range. Red has longer wavelengths and more heat. Blue is shortwave, cooler, and higher in frequency. We also see this polarity constantly in our daily lives. Water taps marked with red for hot, blue for cold. Politics in the United States, red states versus blue states. Fire versus ice. Heat versus cold. In magnetism, red for the North Pole, blue for the South. In biology diagrams, arteries are shown in red and veins in blue, even though real blood is always red. One carries oxygenated blood, the other deoxygenated. Now let's look at Imo-sama, the hidden king. If you flip the word Imo in Japanese, you get Umi, the sea. Imo represents blue, the sea, the cold, the deep. Also black, the void. Mu means nothingness. His powers seem to flood the world, swallowing truth like the sea swallows light. He erases, floods, drowns, creating a new void century every time the truth surfaces. That's the black-blue force, void and sea. Contrast this with Luffy. His powers are all about heat, friction, pressure. Red. Fire. Life. And white, the color of peace. So, water versus fire. Normally, water wins, it extinguishes fire. But here's the twist that changes everything. Add oil to fire, then try to put it out with water. You'll cause an explosion. The fire grows. Why? Because oil floats on water and feeds fire, it resists being extinguished. That's the hidden element. The oil is key to flipping the natural outcome. Even butter, a fat derived from milk, behaves like oil when heated. Scientifically, butter is made of fatty acids, just like cooking oils, it's just more saturated. But functionally, on fire in a pan, it burns like oil. Add water to hot butter or oil, you ignite chaos. That's why this oily element becomes symbolic. Now, let's look at milk in mythology, and how it might have inspired parts of One Piece. In many ancient cultures, milk was more than just food. It was sacred. It appeared in creation stories, in the lives of gods, and even in how people explained the stars. In Norse mythology, before the gods existed, the world was cold and empty. From the ice came a giant named Ymir, the first living being. Ymir survived by drinking the milk of a cosmic cow called Audumbla. This cow also helped create other gods by licking ice until new beings appeared. Here, milk is the first food of creation. It gives life to the first giant and opens the path for gods to exist. Now consider Ymir's alternative name, Im. It's almost the same as Imu, the shadowy ruler of the world in One Piece. That similarity may not be a coincidence. Oda often borrows from mythology, and this link could be intentional. If that's true, then Imu, like Ymir, might represent something ancient. Something tied to the world before history was recorded, maybe even before the Void Century. And just like Ymir drank the first milk from Audumbla, we might imagine that Imu once shared in that same symbolic first nourishment. In the world of One Piece, this could mean Imu was once close to the original world order. Imu may have had a relation with the D-Clan. But if that's true, then why is Imu a villain? If Imu is based on a figure who drank the first milk, shouldn't that make them good? Shouldn't they be like Joy Boy or Luffy? That's a fair question, and it leads to many possibilities. Imu may have started out good. But something happened. We don't know what. Whatever it was, it made them turn away from that past. Imu may have chosen power, fear, or control. They may have turned their back on the world they once wanted to build. And then there's the sound of the name itself. Mu sounds like moo, the sound a cow makes. Maybe it's a small joke from Oda, or maybe it's a deeper clue. A subtle link between Imu and the cosmic cow Audumbla. If Imu really did drink the first milk of the world, then that sound, the moo, might still echo in their name. Greek mythology, Hera and the Milky Way. In Greek mythology, the Milky Way was created from the milk of the goddess Hera. The story goes like this: Hera was tricked into breastfeeding Heracles, a child who wasn't hers. When she realized the truth, she pulled him away, and her milk spilled across the sky, forming the stars we now call the Milky Way. It's a myth filled with anger, rejection, and jealousy. Hera didn't want to share her power, especially not with a child born of another woman. If I had to choose a One Piece character who reflects Hera, it would be Imu-sama. Here's why. Like Hera, Imu seems marked by envy, control, and deep emotional wounds. Maybe they once had a connection to Joy Boy, brief and complicated, like Hera's fleeting bond with Heracles. If Oda really took inspiration from Hera, then maybe Imu was to Joy Boy what Hera was to Heracles, a symbolic milkmother. Someone who briefly nurtured him, only to later reject and deny him. Now, could there be a version of the Milky Way in the world of One Piece? If we take inspiration from mythology, then yes. The red line is the perfect match. Let's break it down through three major myths. First, Chinese myth, the cowherd and the weaver girl. In Chinese mythology, the Milky Way is a heavenly river that separates two star-crossed lovers, the cowherd, Altair, and the weaver girl, Vega. Once a year, during the Qixi festival, a bridge of birds forms across the sky to let them reunite. The red line in One Piece works in a similar way, it splits the world in two. What if, like the myth, it was designed to keep two lovers apart? Maybe Imu-sama, like Hera, was jealous of their bond. Jealous enough to divide the world so they would never meet again. This makes the red line more than geography, it becomes a barrier of heartbreak. Second, Aboriginal Australian astronomy. According to Aboriginal Australian astronomy, the Milky Way is seen as a giant celestial emu bird. Its elongated shape is formed by the dark patches within the galaxy, stretching across the night sky. Interestingly, the name emu sounds almost the same as emu in One Piece. That small detail adds another layer to the theory. The red line may be One Piece's version of the Milky Way, making Imu-sama both the ruler above and the divider of the world. And here's where it gets even more interesting. While the red line may represent the Milky Way in One Piece, there's another element that feels just as important. The clouds in the sky. The real Milky Way, as seen from Earth, doesn't appear as a sharp band of stars. It looks like a hazy, cloud-like trail stretching across the heavens. A river of light, like milk spread through the sky. And in One Piece, clouds play a similar role. Mary-Geoise, high atop the red line, doesn't just stand tall. It touches the clouds, surrounded by fog, mist, and high-altitude vapor. In this way, the Milky Way of One Piece might not only be the red line, it might also be the cloud layer that surrounds the highest place in the world, almost like a home for gods. And when we talk about clouds in One Piece, the first place that comes to mind is Skypiea, the sky island floating on a massive, fossilized cloud formation known as the Imperial Cumulus. In Skypiea, people travel using special cloud paths called Milky Roads. That name isn't random, it clearly comes from the idea of the Milky Way. Which leads to a deeper question: is there a connection between milk and clouds? The most obvious similarity is color. Both are white, soft, and ethereal. But there's more. In meteorology, there's a real phenomenon called the mackerel sky, or buttermilk sky. It happens when cirrocumulus clouds take on a curdled, milky appearance. It's poetic, but also scientifically accurate. These clouds look like milk because of the way light scatters through the particles inside them. And that brings us to something fascinating. Milk and clouds are both colloids. Scientifically, both milk and clouds are what's called colloids. A colloid is a type of mixture where tiny particles are suspended within a substance but don't fully dissolve. Because of this, colloids look smooth but are technically not uniform. They scatter light when the sun hits them. This is called the Tyndall effect. It's why milk looks cloudy and why clouds glow in sunlight. They're made of scattered light and suspended complexity. Now let's quickly recap what we discussed earlier about milk. Milk is a drink that proves opposites like oil and water can unite, but it needs something called an emulsifier to hold it together. We also looked at myths where milk is connected to the Milky Way and goddesses like Hera in Greek myth and Ymir in Norse myth. Based on all this, we can build the following theory. Imo had a biological, righteous child who truly belonged to her. This child, the ancestor of Blackbeard, drank her milk. But Imu's milk already carried demonic traits, passed down through her bloodline. Imu's husband, however, was kind. He brought into the world another child, not Imu's, but a boy of unknown mother. This child was Joy Boy. Joy Boy was originally born from a poor woman in a rural village, where cows and cattle were raised. He drank his mother's breast milk and also the milk of cows, growing up strong and full of joy. Later, Joy Boy also drank Imu's milk. This gave him a mix of two bloodlines. One from his real mother, full of innocence, purity, and freedom. One from Imu, dark, royal, and full of power. Imu rejected Joy Boy after this. Even though her milk had entered him, she no longer wanted him. From that moment, she ceased to be a mother and became something else entirely, an inverted Mary. Who are the D's? The D's aren't tied by blood. They're tied by milk. They are the children of milk. Nursed by the same kind of mothers, fed the same milk line. They are milk siblings. The milk gave them their D-like traits. Smiling when they face death. No fear of dying. Strength to resist. Some D's even wear clothes with cow-like spots, black and white, or brown and white just like cow skin. Many were raised in rural places, living simple lives with cows and peaceful people. They were happy, even without wealth or power. In contrast, Imu and the celestial dragons lived rich, false, and controlling lives. The D's were children of milk, and milk gave them freedom. Real-world proof. The revolution of milk. This isn't just one-piece symbolism. It happened in real life. Milk helped bring down a monarchy. During the French Revolution, milk, motherhood, and rural life became weapons of resistance. The royal elite were mocked for hiring wet nurses, refusing to feed their own children. But rural mothers, who breastfed with their own milk, became symbols of honesty, nature, and liberty. breastfeeding became a revolutionary act. In 1791, the women of Clermont-Ferrand sent a letter to the National Assembly. They wrote, "We let our children suckle an incorruptible milk, clarified with the natural spirit of liberty." It wasn't poetry. It was war. The revolution had a face, Mary Ann, Lady Liberty. She led the people forward, one breast visible. Not in a sexual way, but as a symbol of maternal power. Her milk didn't feed kings. It fed revolutionaries. In the 1700s, noble women refused to breastfeed. They paid poor women in cow villages to do it. These nurses fed babies real milk and real love. Sometimes the children even loved the nurse more than their noble parents. While the royals dined on cakes and cream, peasants survived on cow milk. This wasn't just poverty, it was a cultural divide. And when revolution came, rural women and men rose fiercely. Farmers, cowhoods, shepherds. They fought with farm tools, not for crowns, but for their homes. Thinkers like Rousseau argued that mothers must feed their own babies. He believed breastfed children would grow up freer, stronger, and more moral. In One Piece terms, that's the D-Clan. The children of milk. Rural, rebellious, self-made. They lived beyond the control of palaces and kings. They are what the nobles fear most, people who can live without them. The nursing mothers who raised D's feared Emu. To hide, they fled to places like Amazon Lily. There, they kept giving birth and feeding D children in secret. If Emu found them, she destroyed them. Just like with Port-Gas-D Ace's mother, who died protecting her child of milk. The destruction of Lulusia Kingdom. Lulusia wasn't just rebellious. It was a land of milk. Farms, cows, simple lives. Milk gave them awareness. It woke them up to injustice. That's why they rebelled. The same happened in O'Hara. Rural, peaceful, full of hidden wisdom. Milk gave them clarity and courage. That's why Emu erased them. Milk wakes people up. It makes them question. It gives them strength. Emu hates milk for this. She hunts cows, nursing mothers, and children of milk. Emu realized milk creates rebellion. So she spread alcohol. Alcohol dulls memory, weakens will, and blinds loyalty. Emu tied alcohol to pirate culture until it became sacred. Pirates who refused to drink rum were mocked. Even Shanks tells Luffy in Chapter 1, "You can't be a real pirate if you drink milk." He didn't know it, but he was repeating Emu's trick. Alcohol became pride. But it's poison. Milk is the true drink of freedom. Emu didn't just spread alcohol. He erased milk. Because milk wasn't just food, it was the source of the D-Clan's power. Milk meant balance, memory, dreams. Its purity made it hard to corrupt. Even unconsciously, it planted rebellion. That terrified Emu. And there's a reason why Emu fears milk. Milk is linked to good sleep and to dreams. Scientifically, milk contains tryptophan, which helps the brain produce melatonin, the hormone responsible for deep, natural sleep. That's why people drink milk before bed, to enter a calm state where true dreams begin. Emu, by contrast, is tied to nightmares, not rest, but fear. Not peace, but control. If all the inhabitants of the One Piece world drank warm milk before sleep, Emu's nightmare powers would lose their grip. Why did the Nika fruit choose Luffy, and not Roger or Shanks? The answer is simple. Luffy is the only one who refused alcohol. He drinks milk and eats meat. He stayed pure, childlike, and free from Emu's trap. Roger couldn't act because alcohol dulled him. Alcohol brings forgetting. Milk brings rebellion. Nika loves milk. His power flows from it. That's why Luffy and Joy Boy were chosen. What happened during the Void Century? Some say it was 100 years of snow and deep freeze, where people fell into a kind of sleep. In chapter 134, Luffy tells Sanji, people in snowy countries don't sleep, because if they do, they'll die. Sanji laughs, but Luffy is right. In real life, this is hypothermia. When the body gets too cold, it tricks you into feeling sleepy. But if you sleep, you die. So if Emu brings another 100-year snow age, which drink saves you, alcohol or milk? Alcohol is dangerous in the cold. It widens blood vessels, makes you feel warm, but actually drains heat from the body. The natural defense, keeping blood close to the core, gets cancelled. That is why alcohol speeds up hypothermia. Milk does the opposite. It gives real nourishment. Protein, fat, and warmth from the inside. Now think about Luffy for a moment. In the story, he is always linked with three things. The sun, because he is the sun god Nika, the bringer of dawn. Meat, his favorite food, the fuel of his adventures. Milk, which he often drinks instead of alcohol, a rare choice for a pirate. Now here is the real question, what is the secret connection between the sun, meat, and milk? The answer is vitamin D. The sun creates it when light touches the skin. Meat carries it inside the body of animals. Milk passes it from mother to child. Without vitamin D, people grow weak, tired, and vulnerable to the cold. With it, they stay strong, awake, and alive. The mood of seasons. Science also shows that vitamin D is tied to mood. In dark frozen regions, places like Scandinavia, Alaska, or Siberia, many people suffer from something called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. This happens because of lack of sunlight and lack of vitamin D. Without enough of it, the body makes less serotonin, the chemical that stabilizes mood. The result is tiredness, sadness, and depressive symptoms. Meanwhile, in sunny places, people get plenty of vitamin D from exposure to the sun. Energy rises, mood improves, and life feels joyful. That is why winter is often linked with sadness, laziness, and sleep, while summer is linked with dancing, parties, and smiles. Now we know that milk plays an important role in the story, holding the secret to the D-Clan and the world's broken peace. Yet something still feels off. In pirate history, milk seems out of place, because pirates lived by alcohol, not milk. It looked like an innocent drink compared to the rough, rowdy cult of rum and grog. So the challenge is this: how do we make milk compete with that wild tradition? Could there be a way to slip it into the very heart of pirate culture, so it can be relevant, especially in the world of One Piece? I'd say yes. And the proof is right there on the pirate flag, the Jolly Roger. The skull and crossbones. The skeleton cult tied so deeply to piracy. So how does this connect to milk? Easy. What remains of a person after death is their skeleton. And the consumption of milk strengthens bones. Therefore, a pirate who consumed milk throughout their life would, in theory, have a skeleton that remains stronger and more resistant to decay for a longer period after death compared to that of a pirate who primarily consumed alcohol. Even in death, milk preserves strength. Research on the human skull shows that the appearance of a skull can evoke different emotions based on its structure. The shape of the eye sockets, which often slope downward at the outer edge, can create the optical illusion of a sad, frowning expression. Conversely, a skull with its lower jaw intact and teeth exposed appears to be grinning or laughing, a perpetual, mocking laugh from beyond the grave. This grinning skull is highly reminiscent of individuals with the initial D, who die with a smile on their faces. Applying this to the character of Joy Boy, a likely bearer of the will of D, leads to a compelling idea. If Joy Boy was a consistent consumer of milk, his skeletal remains, particularly his skull, would have remained strong and intact over the centuries. His skull would thus preserve its grinning, laughing expression. Now compare this with Emu and Blackbeard, who exhibit a profound fear of death and seek immortality to achieve their goals, believing their physical presence is necessary. The ideology of the will of D is the opposite. Its bearers do not require physical immortality. Their death does not mean their dreams die, instead, their will is inherited by others who carry the flame forward until the dream is achieved. This is the core ideological battle, immortality versus legacy. So who truly wins? Emu with his false immortality, or Joy Boy with his grinning skull that defies even death? Consider the grave of Joy Boy, which I believe is hidden in Marijua, near where the giant straw hat is kept. Now, imagine Emu, in the present day, suddenly sensing a powerful burst of haki. It is Joy Boy's own haki. This sensation terrifies him, making him believe that Joy Boy himself is still alive. To be certain, Emu opens the tomb, and there it is, Joy Boy's skull, still grinning, still mocking. As if saying, I'm still here. Your immortality means nothing. Rage consumes Emu. Then Luffy, the child of destiny, is born carrying Joy Boy's will. Again Emu is shaken. Again he checks the grave. Again the skull grins. Every time Emu checks the grave to see if Joy Boy is truly gone, he is met with that mocking, smiling skull. It's a physical reminder that Joy Boy's will is still alive now in Luffy. Emu's immortality is useless against an idea that refuses to die. So what is the will of D? If you know the Japanese concept mono no aware, you'll understand. It is the awareness of impermanence, the fleeting beauty of life. Like sakura blossoms, short-lived, falling quickly, but beautiful in their passing. Each blossom dies, yet makes way for others to bloom. The memory of their beauty remains eternal. The will of D is like cherry blossoms, the embodiment of mono no aware. Carriers of the D are like sakura petals, fleeting, beautiful, and destined to fall. They die young, often smiling, passing their dreams to the next. They don't need immortality, because inheritance is enough. The torch burns on. Just like sakura petals drifting in the wind, the D-bearers fall with grace. Their smiles mirror the blossom's final moment, radiant, defiant, and deeply moving. Unlike Emu, who clings to immortality, they choose impact over eternity. And in doing so, they embody mono no aware, the beauty of a life lived fully, even if briefly. Another concept ties into this, eternal return, the idea that history repeats itself. Apply this to One Piece. Before the Void Century, during the Romance Dawn, two lovers existed, a cowherd man and a straw hat girl. She gave him her hat and said, "When you return, give it back to me." But Emu, jealous, separated them. They died, while Emu lived on, believing immortality had triumphed. Yet centuries later, the cycle repeats. Two new lovers appear. The same will, the same straw hat, the same love. And again Emu rages. Emu's immortality is meaningless before a cycle she cannot break. Her eternity is a prison. The D's acceptance of death is freedom. This is the truth the will of D teaches: accept death with a smile. Death is part of the cycle. Graves remind us of this beauty. Skulls remind us that death spares no one, king or beggar, strong or weak, all return to bones. But death cannot erase dreams. It cannot erase will. In pirate history, the Jolly Roger, the skull and crossbones, carried this very meaning. It was not only a threat, but a declaration: we are already dead. We are already bones. We have nothing left to lose.